there's been some shifting fortunes in the last couple of days. Kemi Badenoch in trouble, Robert Jenrick in trouble, James Cleverly seeming to be on the rise. What's the mood amongst the delegates?
You know, Ed, this must be the first Tory conference when Andrew Pearce hasn't been in trouble. He's turned up every day on time, ship shape. And in the past, he's been missing in action or he's been a bit worse for wear.
That's an outrage. I think I should sue over that.
It's true, though. You've got the footage.
Yes. We have had previous conferences where we've had to empty chair you, Andrew. Kevin is not wrong. I don't think you would be able to sue for libel.
It's because... Look, I'm terribly sorry. Hotels are not what they were. They don't do an alarm call anymore. So I've brought my alarm clock this year.
It is not true.
I brought my alarm clock. It's been packed. It is true. You do not get alarm calls in hotels. So I brought my alarm clock Labour last week, alarm clock this week. It's by my bed. There it is. And I take the battery out, put it back in.
Is it next to your tease me in slippers? I mean, you know.
It's because you're so assiduous in your overnight research.
Call me old-fashioned.
You're in the bar so late that you can do our interview and then finally go to bed.
No. I have a rule. I've got to be in bed by 11:30.
Yeah, right. The truth about the atmosphere here, I think, is they're trying to make the best of a bad job. They had a drubbing at the election. They haven't got a leader. They're going for which of the four, which has given them a purpose. But, of course, when you see what's happening in the Middle East, and you see the Prime Minister's deploying British forces to shoot down Iranian missiles aimed at Israel. He's holding Cobra meetings. He's going off to Brussels today to meet the head of the European Commission. You kind of realise how much of a sideshow the Conservatives have become after 14 years of power.
Well, Andrew, it's frustrating, I think, for our viewers that there is a kind of convention that when the political conferences are on, members of the other party don't do big interviews. But the viewers must be thinking, but we're on the brink here in the Middle East. Why isn't the Foreign Secretary out there on Good Morning Britain? I mean, we have a short clip of the Prime Minister at the podium, but there's no guest on the programme this morning.
I think that's absolutely right. And also, Parliament is shut. Parliament has been shut for 3 weeks. It's been shut because of the party conference season. And there's many people, including, I think, the Speaker, who wonder, is this really the right thing? Just because Liberal Democrats MPs having a convention or the Labour Party, why does Parliament close? And why does the business of government grind to a halt, which is effectively what happens? That's what happens.
Yeah, but Susanna, you're right. Look, we live in a democracy. There's got to be scrutiny and accountability. And David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, or John Healey, the Defence Secretary, or one of their ministerial team should be out explaining the UK position and what it means for us, because you could get sucked into a major war in the Middle East. Yeah, with huge consequences.
Because we know that the RAF has been involved, but we don't actually specifically know what we did to assist Israel. But we know we did. And you're right. The Defence Secretary, at the very least, should be telling us why Britain is getting involved in this. And should we be getting involved? Because some people will be thinking we shouldn't.
The thing will be back in 2007. When David Cameron was speaking at the Conservative Party conference, Gordon Brown famously went out and did a visit to Iraq and was hugely criticised for trying to divert attention away from the Conservative conference. And isn't there a sort of a mythology, especially on the Labour side, that it's dangerous to try and distract attention, and therefore they will think simply having Keir Starmer doing one clip last night but then not doing interviews today is respecting the Tories' right to be heard at their conference?
That just feels so old-fashioned to me. No, it just feels like an old convention.
It's what they'll be thinking then.
We live in a 24-hour news world. There is plenty of opportunity for everybody to see what's happening at the Conservative Party conference and also hear a minister of the British government make everybody feel a little bit calmer that we're not on the brink of World War III.
I would have thought somebody will be out till later today. You'll have somebody tomorrow, but they're slow out of the blocks. I remember 2007, and Gordon Brown was accused of politicising troops in Iraq by going there at that time to take public attention away from the Conservative Conference. It backfired on him, not least because all the main political editors of the TV stations and newspapers were all left in Blackpool, it was. I remember because I was at the conference, all left in Blackpool. So, of course, they wanted to make it a row too because they didn't want the story to be Gordon Brown in Iraq. They wanted the story to be back where they were. But this is different because this is responding to an event, that missile attack on Israel from Iran, and also the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in the war with Hezbollah. These are big events happening now.
This is a massive escalation, what's happened overnight with Iran sending, 190 missiles into Israel. It's a huge escalation. British military have been involved. We want to hear why we're involved, what we're doing. Are we going to get more involved? Because people will be concerned, and they're generally concerned about are we on the verge of a massive new war in the Middle East? Because Netanyahu has said there will be a response, and you know from Israel it will be a big response.
Well,
is Israel about to go into war with Iran? Massive step.
The truth is the UK is being exposed as very powerless in this because all the calls for ceasefires in Gaza have got nowhere. Right. Calls for restraint in Lebanon have got nowhere. Maybe the RAF didn't shoot anything down when it was in the air this time. But if it didn't, we should know. There's no disgrace in that. They've put planes up. You want to know what happened, whether they engaged.
You said we've shot missiles down. We don't know that.
No, you're quite right. We did in the past, missiles and drones.
Yep.
No.
We don't know that. We do not know what the British military did. It's been reported they were involved, but we don't know what they did. And why don't we know? I think we're entitled to ask, and we're entitled to be told.
And, of course, the Keir Starmer, behind the scenes, this is complex for him to deal with. We know that Jonathan Ashworth lost his seat, the former Labour campaign chief, because he was defeated by anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian candidate and independent there. And more widely, for the Labour Party, as this war deepens and as Israel is retaliating, this is politically complicating, isn't it, for Labour?
Very much so, because you saw Labour lost 4 seats at the general election to independents who were Muslim. Well, Jeremy Corbyn was slightly different. No, you're right. It is big, hugely politically complicated. And also, some people will be saying, right, it's perfectly legitimate and the right thing to do to shoot down missiles to save lives. And this case, it was Iranian missiles fired at Israel. But others will say there are Israeli missiles killing innocent civilians, children and women in Lebanon and in Gaza. Why don't we shoot down those missiles? I've heard that argument put. And it is an ongoing debate. I think defensive military action is legitimate, but why do we defend some people and not others? If every life matters, if a Lebanese life matters, if a Palestinian life matters, and then Israeli lives definitely matter, why do we take a side and we use military action to stop some people being killed, but not others?
And you've got to think about Wes Streeting, who's the Secretary of State for Health. He's a regular on your programme. He's one of the most media savvy of the lot. His majority is down to just 500 in Ilford, and he faced an independent Muslim candidate all about the war, what's going on. This will be a worry for him, particularly politically, because this will strengthen the opposition to him in his constituency. We've got a very large Muslim population, and it seems yet again the British military is on the Israel side, foursquare. Again, it's why these things need to be explained.
OK, I'm just going to ask you to pause there, both of you, because we have a guest as well in the studio who can provide a different perspective. If you are a massive fan of the Newsagents podcast, you'll be thrilled to know John Sopel is here. Very good morning to you. And the reason I want to come to you right now, John, is because you've written this book, Strange Land. Now, presumably, it is a reference to the UK.
It is.
Because you came back to the UK from America, having been the BBC's America editor, I think back in 2022. And you said the UK had completely changed. You didn't really recognise it anymore. But the reason I wanted to just talk to you at this point in the discussion, being a former America editor, how big is America right now. We talk about the RAF getting involved potentially in what's happening, but the big player is the States, isn't it?
Well, historically, and it's lovely to be with you, and thank you for inviting me on. Good morning,
well, you're
Britain.
very welcome.
And the
It's
book
great
is
to
in
see
the
you.
colours of GMB, as you can see. Yeah, there you are. Look, as we were just hearing, you know, you were saying that Britain is powerless. Britain has always been powerless. America hasn't. America this time round, the words have fallen on entirely deaf ears. You know, the urging of restraint, the urging of don't escalate, all of that has not had any impact on the decisions being made by Benjamin Netanyahu in the wake of what happened on October the 7th. And the Israelis are saying, look, if we're going to, you know, if anyone's in charge of defending us, we are. And we're going to make the decisions. And it's been striking how little impact Biden has had and Antony Blinken have had on the decisions that Israel have made. And so you say, right, you know, restraint, don't go north across the border into Lebanon. They go north across the border. Don't do this, they do it. And so I think it's what has been striking is the fact that no one seems to have that much influence either way.
And I was saying, look, this is complex politics for Keir Starmer, for Labour in Britain, but also for the Democrats. How will escalating war in the next 4 weeks, if that's what happens, impact upon the American presidential election? Does this work to Donald Trump's advantage or to Kamala Harris?
Well, Donald Trump will play the counterfactual to which there is no answer. It wouldn't have happened if I was president, which he said about Ukraine and that Russia would never have invaded. And just about anything bad that happens in the foreign policy field, he says, well, when I was president, I was tough and none of these things happened. And a lot of his supporters will believe that. I think that Joe Biden will not want to be launching full-scale attacks on Iran in the weeks up to the presidential election. I think they watch warily. I mean, by and large, US elections tend to be settled by domestic issues of the state of the economy, immigration, abortion. Those are the things that will matter most. But if you suddenly get a dramatic escalation, then all bets are off.
You're going to be joining us for our American election coverage.
Yeah, I am, and I can't wait. We're going to be in Washington together.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Andrew and Kevin, meanwhile, there is an election going to be held for the leader of the Conservative Party. So let's turn our attention back to that. Look, as Ed just mentioned, they seem to be sort of knocking themselves out one by one. At one stage, Kemi Badenoch was the front runner. Then she said something about maternity pay being excessive that she then said she didn't say at all and everyone had completely made it up. But that seemed to alert people to the fact that sometimes she is not entirely reliable, perhaps, would be the way of describing it. Then you had Robert Jenrick making what you talked about yesterday, Kevin, this rather strange claim in a campaign video about the special forces and what they do because of the European Court.
It was a saying in the video was based upon something that the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace had said last year.
Our special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists because our lawyers tell us if they are caught, the European Court will set them free. It's quite the allegation to make, Kevin.
It is, because it's a war crime to do that. And there's been a lot of flack going Robert Jenrick's way over this. And he's very opposed to the European Convention on Human Rights, the European Court of Human Rights. He's making a case of it, but you can go over the top. It can almost sound like Donald Trump. And Tom Tugendhat, who we heard first, who is an officer who served in Iraq, has really turned his fire, if you excuse the description, on Jenrick over that, because it's accusing British Special Forces of war crimes.
Yeah, you have to remember as well that Jenrick's video is not aimed at the wider public. That is aimed specifically at 180,000 or whatever it is, 160,000 Tory party members and MPs. But it has caused. So will they like what he say? But a lot of MPs I spoke to here yesterday were very uneasy about what he said.
It's very interesting, this contest, because they decided to have a long contest for the leader and to put the candidates through their paces, Q&As on the stage, speeches, lots of scrutiny. And Is it working to the advantage of the Conservative Party? Are we finding out that some of the candidates can't deal with the pressure, that their judgment is being called into question?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. Put them through the fire now. Test them, road test them. Better to do it this side of an election than after you've elected them as leaders. Look, I think this week watching, it's something of an outsider. Andrew's more of an insider with the Conservatives. I think Tom Tugendhat and James Cleverly have had good weeks. I think Kemi Badenoch's had a very bad week. And I thought Jenrick was having a good one, but I think it's beginning to unravel a little with that video and the allegations and the row around it, part of it.
And today we get all four of them will be on stage. They'll speak for about 20 minutes each, one after another. They've drawn lots on who goes first. But it was very interesting that all four of them have also have been interviewed on stage this week. The only one who got a standing ovation was James Cleverly, who's been Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary. He's sort of being seen as the unity candidate, the experienced candidate. And I suspect, my hunch is, I don't know, you never know with Tory MPs, because it is, frankly, the most duplicitous electorate in the world, if not certainly Western Europe. But I don't think Kemi Badenoch will make it into the last two, and yet she has been for weeks and months the front runner and the favourite.
Yeah, the word is one Tory MP, a male, has promised his vote to all four candidates, but he'll only be able to vote once.
Well, that's what they do. That's what they do.
Stay with us, Andrew and Kevin, because we've got John Sopel here, who is
dragged you back from Birmingham.
Yeah.
Been up in Birmingham. The week started with an expectation that the final two chosen by Tory MPs for the ballot would be Kemi Badenoch and that Robert Jenrick, and that Robert Jenrick was ahead. After the last 3 days, how do you feel now about who the final two will be and who's going to win?
Well, do you remember David Cameron coming from nowhere to beat David Davis? I mean, James Cleverly has not come from nowhere. But he
was Home Secretary.
He was Home
And
Secretary, he was Foreign Secretary.
Secretary.
But he's having a very good week. And there is he talks human. He seems like a regular kind of person that, and I think that if the Tory party is thinking, who is going to appeal most to the British people, you'd probably go in that direction. If it's about pleasing the Tory faithful, and I think that, what we just heard there about, of course, the video was produced for the electorate of the Conservative Party membership. Yeah, you can talk to the Hall, but the rest of the country is listening. I mean, the thing that struck me most about that, I was in Liverpool last week for the Labour Party conference. You went to the Labour Party conference and you felt they've just lost the election massively and everyone's so miserable.
They've lost the election, you mean?
And you go to the Tory Party conference and you think they've just won it because everyone's so cheerful.
Yes.
And it's this sort of slightly delusional kind of disjunction of the reality that you've just seen there. Yeah. I mean, look, I think the Tory race... as Andrew knows well, and rightly says, it is the most duplicitous electorate, and people will be saying one thing to you. If all the votes were tallied up that have been pledged to each of the candidates from the MPs, the Tories would have 500 MPs now in Parliament, which they do not have. People are talking with forked tongues, I think it's fair to say.
Andrew, Kevin, we're about to interview a man who seems to stay at the heart of British politics and has finally, in that general election, got himself a seat. I think the 8th time of asking. That is Nigel Farage. Now, how big a presence is he in the minds of those who are there at the Conservative Party conference?
Well, Tory party members talk about him all the time, and they want to know from whoever's going to lead the Tory party how they're going to deal with Farage. Do they do a pact? Is there an electoral pact? Do they not stand in certain seats? Some party members here want to do a merger with Farage, which I don't see is even on the horizon for any of the candidates. But he is the elephant in the room. There is no doubt about it. He is the reason the Tory party did so badly at the election, apart from the Rishi Sunak's deranged decision to go so early. But the Reform vote was so strong in so many Tory seats, it cost them dozens and dozens of seats. So he is a big factor in the room. And if he walked into this party conference like he did, was it last year? That he'd get probably a bigger standing ovation than any of the four who are running for the leadership.
Wow.
Yeah, if he could stand for the members, he might win the election, actually. But a lot of MPs really detest him now, including those who used to be allies of his on a lot of causes, particularly particularly Brexit, because he cost some of their colleagues their seats, and he almost lost them their seats. People like David Davis, for instance, used to always be chummy with him. When they met, he called him something...
Don't use that word.
No. Anyway, Jeremy Hunt knows what I'm talking about. But no, it's, you know, there's a lot of bad blood now.
And of the four candidates...
I tried to stop him.
I know.
And of the four candidates, it feels as though Robert Jenrick is the one who is trying hardest to reach out to reform, to Nigel Farage. Is there any prospect of a 2019 style accommodation deal, sharing of seats between Reform and the Conservatives if Jenrick wins?
Well, I think it's what everybody's talking about here, but none of the candidates are saying it in public. But a lot of people are saying, if particularly where Reform are in second place to Labour seats, about 92, 94 seats. If you remember Jacob Rees-Mogg, who lost his seat at the election, he said at a meeting where I was at the other day, he said, we should just not stand in those seats, and when Reform, the deal would be Reform don't stand in some other seats where the Tories are in second place. I think it's a possibility, but I'm not sure that Nigel Farage would be interested.
Now, electoral pacts are very difficult to stitch together. You can't see a merger of the two parties.
Never going to happen.
He's got his toehold now, Nigel Farage, in Parliament. He's got his seat there himself. There are 5 of them. They got a pretty big vote. So on the scale of UKIP in 2015, yeah, that didn't go anywhere. Well, it went to Brexit, but it didn't go anywhere in parliamentary terms. I just don't... I think Nigel Farage is still bitter that he didn't get anything from Boris Johnson after they stood aside in those Conservative seats in 2019. Okay. I think once bitten, twice shy. Let's
talk to you, John, about Nigel Farage, because part of the point of your book, Strangeland, coming back from the States, is that Britain had changed because of Brexit. Now, love him or loathe him, Nigel Farage was a key factor behind Brexit. He's one of our most effective politicians, whether you like what he says or whether you don't.
Oh, yeah. Look, he's a brilliant communicator. He reaches people. He's the everyman who you kind of think you'd like to have a pint with down at the pub. And I think that he was a very persuasive force in the whole Brexit argument. But I think what the book argues is, look, you know, people were promised so much about what was going to happen with Brexit. And I came back in 2022 and it hadn't happened. And people are starting to feel disillusioned. We get 3 prime ministers in 1 year. I was kind of the first election I voted in was 79. And I knew 3 prime ministers for the next 3 decades. And the whole political system was coming unstuck. Because, you know, I mean, you take immigration, which is a huge issue. And rightly so, people should be concerned about illegal immigration. You had the politicians saying, right, once we stop free movement, net migration will go down. It goes soaring upwards. Now, there are other factors at play there, but I think that easy promises turn out to be really difficult to deliver. And I think that's one of the kind of lessons of this whole period.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk to Nigel Farage in about 20 minutes. Before we let you go, a couple of questions about the BBC. You are no longer there. Were you as shocked and horrified as we all were, particularly those of us who worked at the BBC, about Hugh Edwards?
Utterly. I mean, you know, if I'd known then what I know now, and I came on, sat here and sort of, you know, said this is about his private life, the police have found there is no need for further action.
That was to do with the original story.
That was to do with the original story.
You said there was no evidence of illegal activity
because that's what Scotland Yard had said.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wasn't basing it... I think everyone who knew him, who'd worked with him, feels shocked, betrayed. It's abhorrent what happened, absolutely abhorrent. And, you know, he now has a criminal record.
Also on the BBC... there were often rumours, but we've had reports recently that this government may decide to decriminalise the paying of the licence fee. What impact do you think that would have on the BBC? Is that a huge threat?
Well, I think that, look, the funding model is kind of... Is it relevant to today, where you've got to have a licence fee to how, you know, how do you see... if I'm watching a clip on the phone, on the tube, do I need a licence fee for that or not? And so there are so many ways to stream services that I think if you decriminalise not having a licence fee, that is going to have a very big impact on the BBC's revenue. On the other hand, is it right that people are prosecuted and get a criminal record for not having one. And I think it's I think it sort of points to the conundrum. We're in a digital age, and the fact of a tax sort of based on whether you've got a TV licence or not just seems slightly anachronistic.
It's lovely to see you.
I thought you were going to ask him about another question, which is why has John Sopel not been on Strictly Come Dancing? I mean...
2 left feet, mate.
Obvious,
not like... I'm not Ed Balls.
Obvious
I
candidate.
can't just sashay round the
Have you been
floor.
asked?
I'm not prepared to discuss it.
Oh, come on.
Well, when people don't confirm or deny, it usually means they have, but you've decided not to.
He's still-
We'd love to see
he's
you on
still
Strictly Come
thinking about it.
Do
Dancing.
you reckon?
Yes.
You'd be good.
Honestly, it would be an embarrassment.
It's part of the fun. That's part of the fun for people watching.
We'll
definitely.
see you in Washington, D.C. in a
I'll
few
see you in
weeks.
Washington, D.C. It's going to
Definitely.
be quite a ride.
And also people can see you at the Albert Hall, but only if they have got a ticket,
But it's
because you've
sold out.
sold out. The newsagents play the Albert Hall with perhaps some fancy footwork from John Sopel on stage